welcome back to another episode of the Carbon Cardboard Podcast covering Formula One and the Formula One card hobby. I'm your host, Bryan, Q3 Cards, joined as always with my good friend, Scott from the F1 Castle.
What is up?
For anybody keeping track at home, Scott, we're going to talk some driver moves. The driver is, to use a term that you tend to use in the F1 Castle, it's getting spicy.
A little spicy.
I hate to let everybody know this, but we officially have our first wrong prediction.
Thoughts and prayers.
Thoughts and prayers to me, because as we'll get to it, I thought Esteban Ocon was going to stay with Alpine. And as they say, he's gone. He's gone. Out. He's out. So we will talk about that. So we have so much to talk about. We're going to try to start keeping these under 30 minutes, maybe even a little bit shorter. So we're just going to get right into it, Scott. So Montreal Grand Prix this weekend, Canadian Grand Prix, whatever you want to call it. Not too far from actually either of us. I know this was a race that you've attended. I would love to go at some point because I think Montreal is about 4.5 hours from me. So it's doable. I just need a passport and all that other fun stuff.
Yeah, we can take a carbon cardboard travel contingency up there some year.
Absolutely. All right. So Red Bull, they broke the news first.
That's right.
And I just messed up sharing my screen here. So I'm just, what a complete amateur I am here.
Oh, that's all right. This is a big one, though. This is important. I mean, this is Sergio Perez, who's been living in the realm of 1-year deals for forever. Extended contract here, and it's put out as a 2-year deal. But I have heard some rumblings that it's actually more of like a 1+1. Mm-hmm. So it's like a 1-year guaranteed and then like an option for a second year, which could potentially be on the team side. So who knows? But it's at least in the contract that there's the potential to extend to 2026. It's not like it's just, hey, a 1-term deal, and then we got to redo the entire thing. So it does give him a good shot to stay with the team through 2026. I think this is a good move by Red Bull, right? I mean, I think maybe you could have looked at promoting, Tsunoda or Ricardo potentially, or bringing over someone like Sainz. But listen, right now, don't rock the boat. They're winning the constructors, albeit by a little bit, and Max is cruising the drivers for the most part. So don't break what isn't broken, right? If it ain't broke, don't fix it. So I think right now this is a good move.
Whether it's true or not, I saw a report, and I guess maybe this was Ralph Schumacher, so take that with an entirely grain of salt, but said something to the extent of they keep Checo around to pay Max's salary because Red Bull is actually fairly tight budgeted, and Checo just brings in tons of sponsorships. He sells a lot of merchandise. I would say, I don't know if this is a hot take or anything, Scott, but I would say the one driver on the grid where there's the biggest discrepancy between how I feel like how most of the fans feel about the driver versus how covered in the media, it's probably Checo Perez in terms of, I feel like he never gets his real fair shake in the media. I mean, Checo's got a devout following. Like he is huge in Mexico. Some of these sponsors are huge, and I would say his fans make up a good chunk of the Red Bull merchandise sales. You see just as many Checo shirts and hats and stuff like that when you go. Like I was in Florida a couple months ago, and I was rocking some Red Bull stuff, and more often than not, it was probably 50-50 whether it was it was either Checo or Max. So he's quite popular with the fans.
He is. No, he's extremely popular. I think it helps, obviously, being the best Mexican driver of all time, and the only Mexican driver on the grid right now. You're gonna get that kind of national fan base. I've even got a pair of Sergio Perez number 11 shoes, right? So,
I have seen these in person.
Yeah, they're pretty epic. But I think it makes sense. And listen, I think Ralph Schumacher's comments are a little incendiary. you could say that a couple different ways. You can say, oh, it pays for max salary. You could say it pays for part of the factory. Like at the end of the day, yes, Sergio Perez merch sales and tickets, et cetera, everything he sells with the sponsorships he brings in, with the fan base he brings in, does help them be profitable, does contribute a ton to their revenue. As for whether it pays max salary, I mean, I think that's kinda Ralph being Ralph, but, yeah, no, he's listen, I love Perez with Red Bull. I would love to see him, maybe 2026, the cars are a little different, and maybe it comes to him, and he can put it to him. So, yeah, I'm excited.
We do talk about the cards here. So, initial take on what this does to his card market. Do we see like a bump? Does this stabilize it? Do people not want to? Not that people were out selling his cards, hoping that there wasn't like a precipitous drop. But my opinion, I feel like this gives some stability in the short and near term for his cards.
Yeah, and that's what I would say too. I don't know that you necessarily get a bump out of this signing, but what you don't get is a decrease, right? If you're going to see someone like, I'm actually worried for Carlos Sainz market now, because he's with Ferrari, and if he ends up going to Williams or Stake next year, like he's going to be out of the points for the most part. So his market could suffer. But Perez now being locked in by Red Bull, that keeps him up at the front at the sharp end for at least the next year or so. So yeah, no, I think it's good. It stabilizes his market. I think that was a good term that you used. Won't probably see a bump, but won't see a drop, which is important. So
On screen for those not watching on YouTube here, Scott, the other shocking news this week, and I guess I don't know if we covered it in our last episode or not, but there's some rumors that Bruno Femine was considering benching Ocon for the Canadian Grand Prix. We'll talk about what that means to the reserve driver shortly here. Esteban Ocon, because I can speak here, is set to leave Alpine at the end of the season.
yeah. Now, I mean, I will say his contract was through the end of 2024, right? So
Yeah,
really, what
he's just
this
not
is
coming back.
exactly, this is Alpine kind of just being like, hey, thanks for your time. Like, AKA, we're not re-signing you. I think the timing of it a little suspect. To
Hmm.
do it right after the Monaco incident, and to presumably not really give Ocon much time to look for something else, leads me to believe one of two options. Either A, Ocon maybe actually already has something else lined up. Maybe in the next couple weeks we're going to hear, he's going to Williams, he's going to Haas, he's going to Stake, wherever, and it's something that he's actually already had, and Alpine's just getting out ahead of it, being like, oh, you know what, whatever. Or or maybe he doesn't have anything, and Alpine's just fed up, and Bruno wanted to bench him for Canada, and then we saw some of those reports, like you said, that like, oh, would have like been a contract issue, a legal issue for him to actually bench him for the race. So instead, he's like, all right, well, fine. Let's announce that we're not re-signing him and maybe strip him of an FP1 session.
Scott, I hope you're doing decent. We're gonna get that on a t-shirt. Friend of
Oh,
the
yeah.
show, Jack Doohan.
Oh yeah. What a legend. I mean, we've been talking about it for some time now. And I think maybe I played into the hype a little bit when I was in Miami, because I got to meet him, in person, talk to him, ask him those questions. So we've been playing it up. And obviously, Jack Doohan is a fan favorite in the Formula One card hobby. I mean, it is no secret that there are a plethora of Doohan fans, none bigger than F1 Ben. But of course, a lot of people are interested, and a lot of people would really like to see him get a seat. And while an FP1 session isn't breaking news, what is notable about this is that this was an unscheduled FP1. Like, Doohan is already scheduled to run FP1 at least two other times throughout the season. I think maybe even three, for Ocon or for Gasly, for whoever on Alpine. But this was unscheduled. So like maybe this is as close as Bruno could get to benching Ocon for Canada. Gets doing more time in the car, I mean, it's a good sign towards him potentially filling that seat next year.
And Scott, I feel like Alpine was the butt of a lot of our jokes early on just because the car, for a lack
Jack
of a
Doohan.
better term, was like a tractor at the beginning of the season. I mean, Gasly was able to get points at Monaco. I mean, they had both cars 10 and 11 at the
They've made
um,
progress for sure.
they've made some progress. So I'm a little bit more optimistic about Jack. How you doing? If he does get a chance now than before, because if you go back several episodes ago when we were talking about those driver seat lineups, and I did think at the time Ocon was going to stay. I mean, to me, it seems like Gasly is more the one that would be potentially as the veteran that would stick on, and then potentially, doing. I can't talk tonight, and we're not going to edit this out because there's no editing on this thing.
One take, everyone knows the rules.
Exactly. One of the other reasons, Scott, that I would imagine that Alpine would want to do this in Bruno Famine is to promote their driver academy. I mean, he has been extremely loyal. He has not pulled an Oscar Piastri, and that's one thing to hang their hat on. If they're not going to be at the front of the grid, they have to at least be able to show that they develop and promote their drivers from within, which would then in turn have other young drivers that are coming up through the systems that will, indicate, say, okay, well, I'm willing to sign with Alpine because I have a shot. It's not like I'm in the Red Bull Academy or, and have no shot at any time just because they already have their favorites.
Giant stable. Yeah. No, I mean, I think it, like you said, I think it would be good to kind of prove and to, pay back the loyalty that he's shown. And they're probably not the most desirable seat at the current time as well, which could play into Doohan's hands. There might not be quite as many folks on the grid, veterans that are knocking on their door to try to get a seat. So yeah, I mean, we'll have to see how it plays out. Obviously, for his card market, I've already seen, some breakers and stuff jacking prices way up, jacking Doohan's
Oh,
prices
dude,
way up. Get it?
his prices are doing decent.
Yeah, but so his brake prices are going up. His actual sales, and this is what surprised me, is like I feel like people are starting to bake in the fact that he's going to be driving for them next year because like a gold auto of his just sold for $90 recently, and the last sale before that was like 40. So his market is like 2xing on this news. And I've been asked by multiple people like, "Oh, what are you going to raise the Doohan slot to?" And I was like, "Guys, honestly, I'm not raising it yet. Like I'm not this is just an FP1 session. Like there's, pump the brakes. If more news comes out, maybe we'll see. But for now, get the doing while the doing getting is good, you know?
The I hope that he lands on the grid because he just
Same.
gives us so many puns.
He
It's great.
does. Yeah.
We skipped over really quickly just because I think we were both kind of excited to talk about doing, but Ocon, we didn't really find a home for him. I'm wrong just because I thought he was staying. You actually had him off the grid in our seat prediction
Did.
show. I don't know that I see him on the grid. This this is just my tinfoil hat fan moment for a second here. So just humor me, everybody in the audience here. He has clashed with every single teammate he's had on the grid in one way or another.
Yep.
If you were looking for patterns, one might lead yourself to a conclusion that maybe he's the problem. He seems like he's a great guy, a good driver off the grid. He interviews well, he's well spoken, but like once the visor goes down, he turns into something else that it's I don't know. And teammates never really get along. So him and Gasly never really seeing eye to eye. I mean, Otmar at the time thought he was some evil genius by putting the two of them together. It hasn't worked, and he was let go. So what do we know? But I just I
Yeah.
don't know, Scott. Like of the options, like is he that would Haas go for it to potentially pair him with Behrman? If he's going to clash with Behrman, that doesn't do a whole lot for his prospects. Williams, I think, has some other attractive options that would be less abrasive. I don't know. I don't know if I see him on the grid. I think Scott, maybe his best, maybe just pontificate on this a little bit. I almost feel like his best case scenario is calling in a favor with Toto, getting a 1-year drive with Mercedes while they still let Kimi Antonelli get up the speed, and knowing that 2026 it's Kimi's seat. And that to me is like Ocon's best case scenario. And this
I
isn't the
mean,
Mercedes of 2021 and 2020 and
yeah, but
2019.
it's not the Mercedes of 2022 either, right? Like I mean, listen, if Ocon gets a seat out of Mercedes in 2025 out of this, he's the mastermind. Like, listen, if you have parlayed a torpedoing career in Alpine into a Mercedes seat, that's the best thing he could possibly do for himself, because then he gives himself a competitive car to go out and prove himself in 2025 and maybe get a decent shot in 2026. I think, maybe if that would be amazing for Ocon if he could somehow land a Mercedes seat. Now, I think that's a slim chance, like you said.
Yeah.
I think, obviously he has the tie there, Toto is manager, but I think it's more likely, in my opinion, that he ends in one of three places, either off the grid, like I
Mhm.
mentioned, with Stake partnering Nico Hulkenberg, or like you said, with Haas partnering Behrman. I think like those are kind of the only three places I see him going, because at this point, every place else is filled outside of, like you said, Mercedes or Williams. And Williams, there's one seat. And like now that Red Bull has signed Perez, like you got to think like Sainz might be going to Williams. Like I think, listen, if Sainz is either going to Williams or Audi or Mercedes, I guess at this point, right? And so he's the last domino. I think most teams are going to wait and see where Sainz goes, and then literally it'll be every single day we will be talking about a new signing. Like once Sainz decides where he wants to go,
Mhm.
every day we're going to hear, oh, next driver, next driver, next driver. So Khan, I mean, I'm sure his management, everyone, they're talking, because yeah, he doesn't have many options, but we'll have to see. He's got a shot. Got a shot.
Got a shot. All right, let's shift gears and talk about the Canadian Grand Prix. We've got your castle calls here in a moment, but for
Oh
those
boy.
on the screen here, we could be looking at a wet weekend here, Scott, and rain in Formula 1 is and always has been the great equalizer.
Yeah, rain in Montreal specifically too is pretty spicy, because the Wall of Champions is a thing, and maybe we'll see some more champions touch that wall. But yeah, it's a really good track. It's been wet recently. Like last year, we had a wet qualifying. If you'll remember, Nico Hulkenberg and Fernando Alonso were on the first two rows. So, like we've been here before. So some crazy stuff can happen when it gets wet. And I think we will be in for some entertaining racing this weekend for sure. I'm hoping it's not just downpour though, right? Like the one thing you gotta be cognizant of when it rains is bring the rain, sure, but not a torrential downpour. We want to race, and we don't want them just throwing on full wets until they get to inters and then everyone just beds in. There's a dry line. We want changeable conditions. Give us drizzle, give us a little bit of rain, and then stop. And then everyone switches the softs and then bring the rain back. Like that, that's what you really want to hope for in terms of just mixing up strategies and everything. But qualifying is always electric in the rain, because, if there's any time when it is dry, the track will be absolutely mobbed with all the teams trying to get their cars out there to run in that dry weather. So yeah, I'm excited for some wet weather. Always fun
I
in Canada.
my point of reference, and I feel like I've mentioned this before too, but I always go back to Spa 2021 and George
Ugh,
Russell putting it second in a
mm,
Williams. Like,
amazing.
amazing. Like that's the type of thing, putting a Haas near the top. That's another thing that's probably potentially quite amazing.
Hulkenberg
So,
last year, man. I mean,
yep.
telling you, they're
All right,
coming.
let's go through your castle calls and we'll kind of talk through a little bit more of expectations here with,
Sure.
with a wet track. That
Yep.
a little bit of a tongue twister here. So pole position prediction here.
Pole position. So you guys will be getting these a little early because these are going to be coming out on Friday for me. But I've got Lando Norris here on pole. So the last time we had wet weather, China qualifying, Lando torched it. Last time we had a wet weather qualifying in China, Lando absolutely went nuts and put it on pole. So he's always been good in the wet. I think the car is going to be good here. They like to ride the curbs a little bit. Obviously, you can't do that quite as much in the wet, but I think the Red Bull might be a little unsteady with those curbs, and Lando solid in the wet. I think he's got a shot to take pole here. And then that brings us to the podium predictions, where I think Lando gets a clean getaway, stays with it. I think Max always good in the wet, and I'm actually putting not a Ferrari, not another McLaren Red Bull, but Lewis Hamilton on the
Wow.
podium. First podium of the year for Lewis Hamilton. I'm putting him on there. I mean, listen, he is one of the best ever in the wet. And I think the race could come to him. We'll talk about my castle call in a second, but I think, the wet weather may cause a bit of chaos during the race. And I think Lewis will use his savvy and guile to make his way through it and end up on the podium. And my castle call for this year's 2024 Canadian Grand Prix is that the wet race chaos will cause multiple DNFs. I think we're going to see it. I think we're going to see a couple crashes. I think we're going to see cars end in the barriers. Obviously, hope everyone's good, but yeah, I think we're gonna see some spiciness in the forms of some wet weather crashes on Sunday that will shake things up a bit, and I think that plays into the Hamilton prediction there for me.
Well, your track record's pretty good, especially most recently with Max hitting the
Castle
wall.
castle calls have been on fire lately, so we'll have to see.
Not that we promote sports
Don't count
betting
me
here,
to how
but
many X's, by the way. This is a indiscriminate amount of X's. That doesn't mean 4 DNFs. If we get 2 DNFs, that's a dub for me.
so I'm getting to the point where I'm like, okay, who's the silhouette of there? I kind of see Botas in the second
So
there.
Logan Sargent probably on the left, then
Yep,
Botas, then Albon, then Piastri,
gotcha. Yep, I can see it now.
right? And then once you know, then you know.
Then you know. And if you listen and watch the show, you're always in the know.
Ooh,
Oh, that could be a new tagline.
love it.
Speaking of Nico Hulkenberg, I'm
Mm.
going to go through some recent hits that you've hit in the F1
Oh
Castle.
man,
Hashtag is the kids used to do only in the F1 Castle.
that's right. Man, the last week has been nuts. So last week's Racing Chronos did some Percy's, hit a Nico Hulkenberg 1 of 1 car. So this is Nico Hulkenberg's Pad Paraja from 2023 Sapphire card. Absolutely beautiful in pink. And then we had in the same case, 1 of 6 reds. This case, 2023 Sapphire case, had a pad and 6 reds. And one
Wow.
of them was the Michael Schumacher Legends red that you see here. Absolutely crazy case, man. Sometimes you just get those craft cases and they are a lot of fun. They are a lot of fun. So that was one of the big ones that came out there. And Scott took another case because, you have such a great case. Why don't you try another one? And he hit a red out of 5 Schumacher variation to pair with his legend. And this one, dude, centering on this looks real good. So yeah, quite a few of these are coming your way.
And Racing Chronos, obviously one of the biggest Ferrari collectors and fans
Oh yeah.
in the Formula One hobby here. So good on him. And last but not least,
Hmm. Yeah. Speaking of Lewis Hamilton on a podium, uh, Lewis Hamilton 2020 Sapphire variation purple out of 10. And this makes the 4th purple variation Lewis Hamilton we have pulled in the F1 Castle. So we've now pulled 40% of the print. absolutely legendary card. And this is crazy because this came out of a case that we had opened, and we did like the first 3 boxes from it, then the next 3, and then we ended with 4. And when we were through the first 6, we had pulled 5 variations and a pad Paraja already, but no red, no purples. And then in those last 4 boxes, we pulled 3 more variations, I think. 3. So I think we ended with 8. Maybe we pulled 4. I don't know.
9,
We
I
either had
think it was
8 or 9 variations and then 2 purples. There was actually a Lewis Hamilton 142, the Great Britain winner, which is a beautiful card. And we pulled the red Max. And then we pulled this. So I mean, it just ended up being an absolutely insane case. It's kind of fun to break the cases up like that. You rip it and then you just hold and like, okay, what else is coming out? There's always something, man.
love to see it. And then finally, this looks big.
Yeah. So as we were discussing, Canadian Grand Prix this Sunday, and Canadian Grand Prix back in 2019 was actually the first race that I went to live. Me and my father watched Formula One all through my childhood at home, but he wasn't a big travel guy. So I actually had to get us tickets for his 70th birthday to go to my first Grand Prix. Went with him to Canada 2019. We saw Sebastian Vettel cross the line first and then get the penalty and switch the 1 and 2 boards. But so legendary for me. So Canadian Grand Prix will always have a special place in my heart. And so I was going to be going, but we're not going this year. And I figured, all right, well, if I can't go, the least I can do is have a massive celebration. We're calling it the F1 Sunday celebration stream. So we're going to have a 2020 Chrome case. We're going to have a 2023 Sapphire case. And then we're going to have singles auctions, right? Because we've been doing a lot of the F1 Sunday singles. But there are going to be some really good cards too. So I think that as of the time of this recording, you're hearing this live, it is posted on Fanatics Live. This is on Fanatics Live. Just a heads up. So this is going to be Sunday night at 9 p.m. Eastern on Fanatics Live. We're doing 2020 Chrome, 2023 Sapphire, and auctions. Auctions are going to be a mixture of 2023 Sapphire and 2020 Chrome. So we're probably mixing some 2020 Sapphire as well. But yeah, lots of slabs and big singles for the auctions too. Probably be doing the auctions in like sets of 10. So it'll be like, we'll start off the night, run 10 auctions, and then we'll do like the 2023 Sapphire case, and then we'll run 10 more auctions and then do like the 2020 Chrome case. So yeah, but really looking forward to it. I mean, the 2020 Chrome, these sealed cases have just been crazy lately. I mean, literally my last 5 sealed cases have either had a superfractor or multiple reds. Last case we had 3 reds. And the case before that had the orange Lewis Hamilton auto, red Max. I mean, I feel like we're due for another super, and you can see on my little graphic here, obviously the Max Superfractor Sapphire Selections auto from 2023 is still live. So we've got that up there. 2020 Chrome Lewis Hamilton image variation, iconic, had to include that. And then you'll notice we made a rendering of the Lando Norris 2020 Chrome Superfractor Portrait, true 1 of 1, because it is still live. And we are hunting that. I think that's one of the biggest cards that's still left in there. And we have a history of pulling Superfractor Portrait 1 of 1s that are pretty big. So yeah, going to be a lot of fun. We're also going to have a ton of giveaways. So even if you're not in the break or in the auctions and everything, come join, hang out with us. We'll talk about the race, and we're going to have a ton of giveaways, probably over like $500 worth of giveaways, guys. So it's going to be a lot of fun. Legendary stream. Really excited for it.
Awesome. Definitely check it out. And if we end now, Scott, I think we can end at under 30 minutes. So
Man,
exciting rate. Yeah, it's almost like we do this often. So, exciting race coming up, exciting Sunday celebration stream on Fanatics Live. So, Scott, I will throw it over to you to bring us home.
All right, guys. So we got Canada this weekend. But as always, collect your cardboard and keep it carbon.